I think a lot about this shot from Andor. This imagery contains a visual representation of the main thesis of the show, and it conveys that thesis through its primary visual motif. That motif is water, and that thesis is that authoritarianism is unnatural. Before I go on, I should give a quick shout out to Rob Zachney for nailing Andor's reliance on water to convey subtext. He mentioned that on an episode of A More Civilized Age, which is the only good Star Wars podcast. But let's get into what is actually happening with this shot. This is Narkina 5, a work prison that the Empire constructed to provide labor for its military-industrial projects. In the fiction of the show, it is a structure that sits in an ocean or a lake and uses a combination of water and gravity to generate power. But that's not the real reason Tony Gilroy, the creator of Andor, and his writing team built it this way. Narkina 5 sits in the water to illustrate the conflict between the Empire and the natural state of the universe. This is a machine built to push back the seas. It even reflects the symbol of the Empire. But the sea still surrounds it and is constantly pushing back in because that's its nature. But of course, this is Star Wars, so nature can take on a magical characteristic as well. The water represents the presence of the Force, and you'll see in the show that water follows Cassian around. One of the criticisms of Andor is that it doesn't feel very Star Wars. What people usually mean by that is it doesn't have lightsabers, Jedi, or obvious expressions of the Force. But this is a strength of the show. We get to see how average people are just scraping by and surviving under oppression. We get to see how, even under a tyrannical regime, people are still motivated by petty, personal grievances. But it's actually incorrect to say that the Force is not in the show. It's everywhere in Andor. And it is specifically in Andor, as in Cassian himself. Of course, Andor is not a Jedi. He's not even a Force wielder of any kind. He's something different. The Force wields him. Or maybe it's more accurate to say that the Force runs through him like a current. That is the major trait of Cassian as a character. He flows like water, and like a running river, he slowly snakes his way through the terrain, around obstacles, or, if he must, through them. This is what makes him such an object of curiosity for Stellan Skarsgård's Luthan Rael. Luthan knows what Andor can do, but he also recognizes that Andor only ever used his ability to benefit himself before. So that's the story of Season 1. It's about Andor recognizing that he has a responsibility as well as the capability to do more. That starts with him aiding the heist on Aldani as a mercenary. Although here we get to see that Luthan is right about Andor, he does get everyone on that team flowing in the same direction. Even as he wants to keep the Aldani crew at arm's length, he can't help but channel their energies into a more cohesive whole. And as a result of Aldani, he is a crucial part in getting the Empire to rechannel its energies into squeezing its grip around the universe's throat even tighter.
Part of what?
I'll ask the questions. Pier 9, runners heading south.
That is exactly the outcome that Luthan, who is wielding Andor, wanted. That leads to a new obstacle for Andor to attempt to flow around, an oppressive police state. But as I said, Andor cannot always flow around everything. Sometimes he flows through the boulder standing in his way and explodes out the other side. On Narkina 5, the Empire temporarily stills Andor's waters. They built a terrifying contraption to contain people, and it even seems to work on Andor. Eventually, Andor begins roiling, and its churning water draws in the rest of the men on Narkina 5, and Cassian applies all of that pressure on the one way out, and that leads to this. And this is it. This is the visual metaphor made complete. It is showing that people like Andor, through which the Force and justice flows, will be able to tow along the people to burst through the walls of oppression. This is the thesis of Andor visualized like a painting. This is what makes the show so goddamn good. You know, the Force doesn't just show up in Andor through Cassian. It also appears through Luthan. And that's not to say that he is using the Jedi mind trick or something like that. He is doing something else. By the end of the first season of Andor, Cassian has amassed so much energy that he acts like a gravitational well that leads everyone in the story back to him on Ferrix when he goes to attend his mother's funeral. Uh, Big ups to Marva, by the way. Rip, she's a real one. This is when Luthan realizes exactly what is going on and that he's, been successful, although it takes him a second. He's been so desperate to manufacture a rebellion against the Empire that he overlooked people like Andor, and specifically the people from whom Andor comes. Luthen recognizes, finally, that Andor's flow through the Force has led to this moment. He is a spark, and Ferrix is a fire waiting to happen, one that Luthen didn't really even think about existing until this moment. Luthen didn't know about the Marvas of the world, and sure, he has Nemik on his Aldani crew, but he wasn't listening to his manifesto. Luthen is above that.
Remember this. Freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. And then remember this. The Imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks. It leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that. And know this. The day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance, will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this. Try.
Nemik said acts of revolution are happening naturally throughout the universe constantly. And now the evidence of that is sitting right before Luthen's eyes. And he sees that they can happen without his presence or involvement. But of course, when he puts this together, he is involved. This was the very reason he hired Cassian in the first place to help with the Aldani heist, to set the conditions that would lead to a tight-knit community like Ferrix to stand up and rebel against the Empire. And that's because he is wielding the Force by wielding Cassian Andor and people like him. That's not to say he's a Jedi. That doesn't matter. He recognizes that the Force connects people, and he knows, somehow, to tug on those connections if he wants to grab the reins of the political universe, to veer it back toward justice. He just can't do that without Cassian Andor. All right, thanks for watching. I really like this show. I also like videos like this. I don't know if I'm any good at this, but when I watch the show over and over again, something I am guilty of, these thoughts come to me, and I write them down or I speak them into a recorder, and then I go back later and look at them and be like, you know what? I want to share this. So hopefully you like it, and hopefully season 2 is just as good. We're getting some reviews. It sounds like it might be. But for now, very happy to keep talking about season 1. So thank you for watching. If you like this, please share it with somebody. Hit the like button. Subscribe. I'm Jeff Grubb. I'll be back with more at some point. Until then, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.